be joined today by Alex Depledge. Alex, apart from being frantic and just talking about moving, how are you?
Yeah, good, surviving. To be fair, I'm actually having quite a good, nice time. I think that I really believe that old adage that anyone can run a business in the good times, but it actually takes proper skill and real grit to get through the bad times. And so, yeah, I think I'm more of a like wartime CEO than I am
Yeah,
peacetime. So I'm probably in my element, actually.
I love that.
Strangely, yeah,
No, I do love it. So listen, there's so many, I love talking to you because there's so many different aspects we can go on, but I want to start on one of the things that fascinates me about you've run businesses, had successful businesses, so running current business, but also you're very involved in the startup community and also the kind of political game and everything like that.
yeah.
Is it a strategic plan for yourself over bringing all these elements together in order for you to achieve what you want to achieve? Or have you just fallen into it? And which part do you enjoy the most, I suppose? So many questions there for you.
No, do you know what? Like, it's something I've actually asked myself before because it definitely wasn't deliberate. I definitely didn't. You know how sometimes like people have a plan and they sort of go after it. I
Yeah.
think a couple of things happened. I think one, because there's not that many female tech leaders, it sort of kind of raised my profile generally. The other thing that Rachel Reeves told me about a year and a half ago was that I'm really memorable. And I thought about that a little bit, and I was like, I probably am quite memorable. I'm quite loud, quite extroverted,
Mm.
northern, and the thing is, I speak my mind, and I think that's actually quite a rarity in today because people are afraid of misrepresentation on social media, things being taken out of context. You have to be really, really careful. And quite frankly, I've never really worried about that sort of stuff because I always think that like if you're coming from a good place and you're trying to do good, then naturally most people will see that. And so I think because I speak my mind, and I'm told I'm quite refreshing. And so those things, those factors all sort of came together at a time when, David Cameron was really trying to put the UK scene on the map in terms of
Yeah.
like the amount of VC dollars we could raise, like the amount of, unicorns we could build. And I think all of those sort of, just right time, right place sort of stuff happened. Being a woman, being noisy, I just sort of,
Yeah.
this profile sort of came about and people started asking me, what did I think about this? And I think, in another life, if I was more diplomatic and I didn't have such a colourful past, I may have been a politician, but
Okay.
I didn't obviously choose that route. I'm not very good at towing the line, so I probably would be a really bad MP.
But I think but the other part that interests me is, again, with your own business, you're making a decision, you're moving, and you're doing whatever you need to in order to get ahead. When you're dealing in the world of politics, the decision doesn't come for way down the line. How do you balance that out for yourself? Like, are you okay just speaking your mind and then almost leaving them to get on with it?
Yeah, because it's not my job, and I think it's something that you learn the difference between an executive and a non-executive. So I'm a non-executive on Persimmons
Yeah.
PLC, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're not going to be able to deal with that because you're just a doer. You like to get your hands dirty." And actually, I'm pretty good at knowing when to jump in feet first and wade through, and then when to just kind of offer my advice and sit back. And so I do get frustrated. I mean, how can you not look at the situation that we're in the UK, where every single problem that we face is systemic or structural? There are no short-term to medium fixes. Everything's going to take money, work, bold thinking, and not get a little bit depressed about where we are. But I just try and stay in my lane of the things that I do know very, very well, and to keep saying the same thing. Because I think if you've got a positive on message and you beat that drum all the time, eventually the right opportunity in the right time opens up and it will work. And I just have to keep that faith, I think, which is a pretty lame
Makes
answer, I realise, Nick.
No, it makes sense, but I still believe it must be really frustrating. Listen,
Yeah.
you mentioned before you're a female in the tech space, kind of an entrepreneur, and so actually you owned a niche, I suppose.
Yeah.
Where are we on the journey to equality within the STEM industry, I should ask you? And also, how do you feel towards owning the niche? And would you rather be just known as a amazing entrepreneur who's been really successful, amazing tech entrepreneur who's been really successful?
I mean, look, on the last one, there's just no question. It really upsets me when the only award I can win is like Female Entrepreneur of the Year. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great honor, but wouldn't it be really nice if it was like, just Entrepreneur of the Year? And we still seem a ways from that. And I think I guess where are we on the journey? Look, the stats don't lie. I was part of, I've been part of many task forces in government looking at like how do we get more high growth businesses, but in particular, how do we get more high growth businesses that are founded and run by women? And the truth of the matter is, there's some really key things that we've made no progress on. So the part of the reason that the numbers in terms of like how much money flowing into these, how much investment money flowing into these business hasn't changed is predominantly, and no one's going to like this answer because it's not an easy answer, is that childcare in the UK is insanely unaffordable in
Mm.
comparison to the rest of the world. And until we change that, it's not just like who is looking after the child, man or woman. It's like being able to afford for one of you to not have to compromise your career or stay at home, and we don't seem to have a good answer for that. And so that's predominantly, women still take care. That's when the pay differential, the gender pay gap, if you like, arises in just the workforce. But also, because of that, like women, if they've got no support network, they're not going to go out and raise 10 million quid
Mm.
to expand into Europe, because, well, why would you want to do that when you're trying to raise a young family? So that is the crux of it all. And until that changes, I'm not sure we're going to see, no matter how well intentioned these mentorship networks are and all this support we keep trying to put in around women, it's just not going to move the needle. And it's what I was telling this current government, like, stop focusing on the things that are easy, because they're not going to have any impact. You've got to focus on the one thing that's really hard and try to make some change there, because that will disproportionately move the needle.
And do you believe that has to be led by politicians, or do you believe it's about society society standing up and saying, "Hey, this is a systemic change. This isn't something we can play around."
I mean, I think that, uh, for the most part, I think government needs to sort of create the right conditions and then get out of the way. It did that really, really well if you look at like seed funding in the UK. So SCIS, EIS, tax incentivization schemes, they are the main reason that we have got such a thriving startup scheme, and also that we're ahead of Paris and Berlin and all the people that we like to compete about, but bar the US and China. And actually, that's because we created this really good framework that aligned incentives and worked. So we
Yeah.
need to do the same thing in the childcare arena. If you create the right incentives in the right environment, get out of the way, and actually society and the private sector will take that forward. So that's the partnership that I want to see. Just let me get rid of WhatsApp. The partnership that I want to see, between kind of the public and the private. Like, I'm not one of these like everything's got to be run by the state, and I'm equally
Yeah.
not like a massive free marketeer. I think there's a really nice blend that can happen, but you have to have long-term planning and you have to have bold decision making, and those both of those things have been noticeably absent for like the last 15 years. So
Let me ask you one last question, because kind of, and you mentioned it before, like kind of startup and startup community. You have the knack of spotting top startups. What give us some things about what you are looking for? Is it consistency, or is it about the people they're dealing with?
in terms of like what makes a good, where we see the niches.
Yeah, where do you get kind of what pricks your ears up and makes you kind of interested in people or companies that are going on?
I think, so I'll try and keep this short, but essentially, I think I always look at sector first. So we do not need any more consumer. I mean, running a consumer business, this is highly ironic of me to say, but we don't need any more innovation in consumer technology, because like we don't really need to help people find a barber quicker or
Yeah.
buy something faster. What we do need is like societal impact technology. So things like in the healthcare sector, things in AI, because that is the new frontier, things in like automated manufacturing. So the things that actually are going to contribute to the fabric of growth, and drive it through in a sustainable way. And we've seen like in the last 10 years why we shouldn't be a services based consumer economy, because that growth is not sustainable. It has a cap. And so actually we need to be innovating in these other spaces.
Mm.
So I choose the sector first always, because is it something that needs change? Is it something that can really drive growth forward and wealth generation forward? And I realize that's a dirty word, but let's be really honest. More
Yeah.
wealth, more tax, more money going into public services. If we can do that, then it's all about the people. Or what I look for in a person is like, when the shit hits the fan and their back is against the wall, are they going to be wily and be able to get around it? Are they resilient? Do they
Yeah.
have grit? and everything else is irrespective. I don't care where they've come from, what jobs they've done, what experience they've done. It's actually really about the character of a person, because if they've got that, then you know that they will find a way through no matter what happens.
So can I? Like I said, look, that was the last question, but I've got one other to talk about that because I love it, and it was something we were talking about off camera before we started. But do you have like you brought up loads and loads of stuff here, and I know in our previous conversations,
Sorry.
kind of you asked loads of questions, which always fascinates me. Do you keep yourself positive all the times, or kind of, or do you balance that out sometimes with kind of that in self indulgence, like it's all going to pot type thing?
Oh, Nick, like, I mean, honestly, 14 months ago, I was on my knees. Like, I hated the world. I hated my company. I hated everybody in it. I blamed COVID, the government, you name it. I was wallowing in the depths of, I just wanted to give up. Um, and I've been there a few times, but it takes a lot piled on top of each other to kind of get me there, because I think, I don't know, I'm the sort of person that if you tell me that I can't do something, I'm gonna just do it to spite you
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
which is maybe like a good thing and a bad thing. So, I think, yeah, I think I'm probably a lot stronger than a lot of people, and
yeah.
that's not blowing my own trumpet. But it can also be a really bad thing, right? Because I can become so tunnel visioned and so focused on something, can be at the detriment of other things. Like my family and my friends. Which, if you ask my friends, they'd be like, "Alex, who? We haven't seen her for years."
Listen, and on that note, first I should say, no, friends, she's with me because we're having great
Yeah.
chats, so that's what we're doing. Um, listen, Alex Depledge, it's been lovely speaking. Thanks so much indeed for
Thank
your
you.
time. Have a
Good to
great day.
speak to you, Nick. Thanks.